Behold, the divine light guides us all.
How about Shemel Shah? Barakatah Yahweh Shah. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh Shah.
Psalm 145. I will extol thee, my God, O King, and I will bless thy name forever and ever. Every day will I bless thee, and I will praise thy name forever and ever. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. One generation shall praise thy works to another, and shall declare thy mighty acts. I will speak of the glorious honor of thy majesty, and of thy wondrous works. And men shall speak of the might of thy terrible acts, and I will declare thy greatness. They shall abundantly utter the memory of thy great goodness, and shall sing of thy righteousness. The Lord is gracious and full of compassion, slow to anger, and of great mercy. The Lord is good to all, and his tender mercies are over all his works. All thy works shall praise thee, O Lord, and thy saints shall bless thee. They shall speak of the glory of thy kingdom, and talk of thy power, to make known to the sons of men his mighty acts, and the glorious majesty of his kingdom. Thy kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and thy dominion endureth throughout all generations. The Lord upholdeth all that fall, and raiseth up all those that be bowed down. The eyes of all wait upon thee, and thou givest them their meat in due season. Thou openest thine hand, and satisfiest the desire of every living thing. The Lord is righteous in all his ways, and holy in all his works. The Lord is nigh unto all them that call upon him, to all that call upon him in truth. He will fulfill the desire of them that fear him. He also will hear their cry, and will save them. The Lord preserveth all men that love him, but all the wicked will he destroy. My mouth shall speak the praise of the Lord, and let all flesh bless his holy name forever. Show my love.
Abanawa, Shabashimayim, Kodash, Haya, Shamka, Yahawa, Malakwaka, Taba'a Ratazaka, Haya, Aisha, Ba'arataza, Kawa, Haya, Bashimayim, Nathanlanawa, Lakam, Kal Yawam, Wasalaklanawa, Kawabwat Nawa, Kasalak Nawa, Kawabwati Nawa, Wala'a, Tabaya Anawa, Banasayawan, Abal, Haushai Nawa, Mayan, Rai Kaya, Laka, Hamalakwath, Waha'ala, Wahata Ba'arath, La'aiwalamium, Aman.
How about Shemel Shah? Barakatah Yahweh Shah. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh Shah.
All right. Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Makakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessing and salutation to the hopeful like out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds. In the name of Yahweh Bashem Shah, pushing to get about it, and shalom to the hopeful like the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Shah. All right, and what I want to do is a continuation in the book of Acts. All right, the 7th chapter. And this is one of the most famous chapters in the book of Acts. You know, this is when Stephen, when Stephen, gives his testimony, and he runs it down from Abraham all the way to Yahweh Shai, making a connection. All right, because what we have to understand, Yahweh Shai came for a particular lineage, okay, of people. Okay, Yahweh Shai didn't come, for the entire, human race. That's one of the main, falsehoods of Christianity. as if Yahweh Shai, he made that sacrifice for the sake of all humanity. That they made that doctrine, out of John 3:16. Okay, not understanding that their world, all right, which in the Greek is cosmos, was speaking of the world of Israel, all right, the cosmos of Israelites. Okay, Yahweh Shai died for a lineage. Okay, he was sacrificed. He was sent to be a sacrifice by the Most High for a particular lineage. Okay, to establish, the promises made through Abraham. Because according to their first covenant, we will never, achieve our end of the deal in order to get those promises by being perfect in the law. Okay, and Abraham was an example of faith. He received the promises based on faith. All right, so Yahweh Shai sacrifice, okay, created a scenario to where we will be justified through faith and not by the perfection of the law. Okay, which links us to the promises of Abraham. Okay, so Stephen Salaki, Stephen is going to run it down according to the history from Abraham to Yahushua. Remember in chapter 6, he said he had the face of an angel, as he was being brought, before, the chief priest, okay, for a testimony, so he's going to run down his testimony. Okay, you can tell the spirit is on him heavy, to be bold, and may we be bold, if we, all right, happen to be in this situation in the coming future, man. Because it's the times that we're in. Some brothers gonna get snatched up. Some brothers, gonna have to have a testimony. But we already have the faith, as we went into, earlier in chapter 6, that the Lord is gonna give us utterance. He's gonna give us a mouth to speak. Okay, and this is a great example of that. This account. So let's get into it. The book of Acts chapter 7 and verse 1. It says, then the high priest asked Stephen, are these accusations true? Okay, because they had made up, false accusations. They tried to deal with Stephen, and they couldn't deal. They was confounded. It was cut. Okay, as you read in chapter 6, they was confounded when they tried to deal with Stephen. Okay, according to the doctrine. All right, so they just made up charges, and now, like I said, he's before, the high priest. Okay, for testimony. Said this was Stephen's reply: brothers and fathers, listen to me. Our glorious power appeared to our ancestor Abraham in Mesopotamia before he settled in Haran. The Most High told him, leave your native land and your relatives and come into the land that I will show you. Okay, as we know, Abraham had to leave, from the house of his father. That was a big deal. Okay, so he left his inheritance. Okay, and it was the customs, with the Near East. Okay, to carry on, all right, your father's house. Okay, whatever your father was into, you were supposed to carry on in that. Once Torah, he worshiped idols. Okay, that was in the land of the Chaldeans. But Abraham was told to separate, and he had to move by faith. So even you go into Abraham, his origin story, even when he separated from his father, that took faith. As we separated from the traditions of our families, our fathers, our mothers, and grandfathers, and grandmothers, We separated from our house to follow Yahweh Bashimal Shah. And this was unknown to us, just like the land, okay, of Canaan where Abraham was, told to go. It was unknown to him. He wasn't familiar with it, just as we left something familiar to go into the unfamiliar. But it was all through faith of the hearing of his word. Okay. Abraham had faith of the command, all right, and the hearing of the Most High. Okay. It says, so Abraham left the land of the Chaldeans and lived in Haran until his father died. Then the Most High brought him to the land where you now live. But the Most High gave him no inheritance here, not even a square foot of land. The Most High did promise, however, that eventually the whole land will belong to Abraham and his descendants, even though he had no children yet. So Abraham's whole story is based off faith. Okay, he was promised to be a father of nations. Okay, his descendants will be the sand of the sea, and that was before he had children. Okay, so Abraham's whole walk is just based off trusting Yahweh Bashim Shah every step of the way. Okay, Abraham was the embodiment of walking by faith and not by sight. Verse 6 said the Most High also told him that his descendants will live in a foreign land where they would be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. And they was talking about ancient Egypt. Okay, it wasn't talking about this time. Elijah Jake made a doctrine out of this. You had that 400-year doctrine going back to 2000, 19, 2020. Say Jake had that 400-year doctrine based off of 1619. Okay, which they wasn't speaking at that time. All right, and that false doctrine has been, confounded by the fact that we're still here. Okay, it says Acts 7:7 said, "But I will punish the nations that enslaved them." The Most High said, and it says, "And in the day they will come out and worship me here in this place." Okay, and in the end they will come out and worship me here in this place. Okay, because eventually he judged, all right, the Egyptians, freed, children of Israel. Okay, and eventually they made it to the promised land. That generation was killed off, saving Caleb and Joshua. Okay, but the children of those Israelites that was delivered out of Egypt, they eventually came into the promised land. Okay, and it says the Most High also gave Abraham the covenant of circumcision at that time. So when Abraham became the father of Isaac, he circumcised him on the eighth day. And the practice was continued when Isaac became the father of Jacob, and when Jacob became the father of the 12 patriarchs of the nation of Israel. Okay? So the promises and the covenant is dealing with this line, period. Okay? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had, the 12 patriarchs, man, his sons. Okay? They will be the progenitor of all the tribes, okay, of the earth today. You see? And all the descendants that come from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, those are the children of promise, nothing outside of that, man. Okay? Let's get it real quick. When you really get into the scripture, you can't get around it. Okay? You can try to twist scriptures and, twist words and make it seem like the covenant is for everyone. Okay? But when you follow the narrative of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, okay, it's the same thing through and through. Okay? The Lord is dealing with one lineage of people through and through. Okay? So, let's go here. Might be 105. All This Psalms 105 and 5, and this is in the NLT. It says, remember the wonders he has performed, his miracles, and the rulings he has given. Your children, I say, you children of his servant Abraham, you descendants of Jacob, his chosen ones. Okay? And it says, he is the Lord Yahweh Bashem Al Shah power. His justice is seen throughout the land. He always stands by his covenant, the commitment he made to 1,000 generations. This is the covenant that he made with Abraham and the oath he swore to Isaac. He confirmed it to Jacob as a decree and to the people of Israel as a never ending covenant. Okay? So this is the lineage of the covenant, man. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, and everything that will come from Jacob, from the seed of Jacob, the seed of Israel, okay, is the people whom the Lord made a never-ending covenant with. Okay, because the new covenant is an upgraded version of the old covenant for the same people. You see, the thing about the new covenant, we're going to be changed, so we can uphold our end of the covenant forever. So we can rule forever in righteousness, man. But it's dealing with the same people, and when you open it up, all right, to other nations, when you teach that this open to other nations, you're calling the Most High a lie. Okay? Let's go from there. Let's get this real quick. Get this in the book of Sirach. Let's see, I believe that verse 44. So you go here to the book of Sirach, chapter 44. Okay. Which, when you go into the book of Sirach, it walks down the sons of God. Okay. It's a lot of history. You read the book of Sirach, chapter 44 to like verse 47. It might be another series to tap into, just going into Sirach, beginning at chapter 44. I think it go into like 47. All right, just running down the history of our notable forefathers, man. Okay, but just getting to the point. Sirach 44 and 19 said, Abraham was a great father of many people. In glory was there none like unto him, who kept the law of the Most High and was in covenant with him. He established the covenant in his flesh, and when he was proved, he was found faithful. Okay, his willingness, to kill Isaac, his son, his heir, even though he was promised, to have children at the sand of the sea, where he had the faith to kill, all right, his heir, his only heir. He believed that the Most High can raise him back up. Okay, he believed in the promise regardless. Abraham had, impeccable faith, man. Okay. 21 said, therefore he assured him by an oath that he will bless the nations in his seed, and that he will multiply him as the dust of the earth, and exalt his seed as the stars, and cause them to inherit from sea to sea, and from the river unto the uttermost part of the land. With Isaac did he establish likewise for Abraham his father's sake the blessing of all men and the covenant, and made it rest upon the head of Jacob. He acknowledged him in his blessings and gave him a heritage, and divided his portions among the 12 tribes. Did he part them? Okay? So the narrative never changed all throughout the Bible when it comes to the children of the covenant, the children of the promise. Okay? These epistles in the New Testament written to the churches was written to descendants, okay, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, man, that was scattered amongst the heathen, okay, that had went through, all right, there was the results, okay, of Hellenization, those Israelite foreigners was a product, all right, of Israel being Hellenized during the time of the Greeks. Okay, but they were still descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They came back, all right, through what? Through faith, through hearing of the word, just as Abraham, okay, he received the promise, okay, and the covenant through what? Through faith, and it was always meant, okay, for us to be justified through faith, okay? That was the Lord's intent from the beginning. So let's go back here to the book of Acts. All right, so you go back to the book of Acts, um, chapter 7, verse 9. It said, these patriarchs were jealous of their brother Joseph, and they sold him to be a slave in Egypt, but the Most High was with him and rescued him from all his troubles, and the Most High gave him favor before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. The Most High also gave Joseph unusual wisdom, so that Pharaoh appointed him governor over all of Egypt and put him in charge of the palace. Okay, because the Lord used Joseph, okay, to be like a savior. You know, he saved the Egyptian empire, and he was doing this so that his family, okay, could come and have a place to dwell during their famine. Okay, because Israel, the nation, we became a nation in Egypt in captivity. Okay, so the Lord sent Joseph as a forerunner and had favor on him. All right, so there will be a place, okay, for his family to come, and Israel become a nation, okay, in Egypt. It says, but a famine came upon Egypt and Canaan. There was great misery, and our ancestors ran out of food. Jacob heard that there was still grain in Egypt, so he sent his sons, our ancestors, to buy some. The second time they went, Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers, and they were introduced to Pharaoh. Then Joseph sent for his father Jacob and all his relatives to come to Egypt, 75 persons in all. So his father, his brethren, okay, the rest of the patriarchs, okay, their children, their families, they all came into Egypt. It was 75, okay, they came into Egypt, and they left out of Egypt a nation. You see a whole nation of people, okay, going back to the promises the Lord made with Abraham, that his seed would be as the sand of the sea. So reading on, all right, and Egypt was the beginning of that, And it says, so Jacob went to Egypt. He died there, as did our ancestors. Their bodies were taken to Shechem and buried in the tomb Abraham had brought for a certain price from Hamar's son in Shechem. And the time drew near when the Most High will fulfill his promise to Abraham. The number of our people in Egypt greatly increased. But the new king came to the throne of Egypt who knew nothing about Joseph. The king exploited our people and oppressed them, forcing parents to abandon newborn babies so they would die. Going back to Exodus, okay? Exodus, the first chapter, okay, is we began to become a people. Pharaoh looking at, the mightiness of the men of Israel, and he put out a decree to kill all the Hebrew sons, because he feared that these people would rise up that he was oppressing. Okay? Going back to Exodus, the first chapter. At that time, Moses was born. So Moses was born during that decree. Okay? And it says, a beautiful child in the Most High's eyes. His parents cared for him at home for 3 months. When they had to abandon him, Pharaoh's daughter adopted him and raised him as her own son. All right, show you how the Lord was dealing. Moses was preserved. Moses was born of the spirit. He was born with a heavy purpose, man. So he was preserved. You see, and it shows you that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, because he overrode, all right, that decree given by Pharaoh to kill all Hebrew boys. All right, and Moses was spared for a mighty purpose, man. Okay, he said Moses was taught all wisdom of the Egyptian, and he was powerful in both speech and action. So Moses, he was high up amongst the Egyptians. He wasn't just no, you see, like Jake, talking about missing camp because they got a new job. No, Moses was up there, man. Okay, he was amongst the elites. Okay, of Pharaoh. All right. You look at the position that Moses held. Look, considered. He had the privilege of the son of Pharaoh. He was a prince. He had the status of a prince, man. Okay. So what Moses walked away from was a lot, man. He made a sacrifice through faith. Moses was an example of faith, man. Okay. Let's see real quick. So let's pull this up. Something I had in the chat, dealing with Moses, all right, and what he walked away from. Okay. So let's just go into this real quick backdrop dealing with Moses. And I asked, would Moses have been considered a prince in the house of Pharaoh, which would mean, all right, he walked away from a lot through faith? Short answer, yes, very likely. Okay, at least in the Bible sense, and that's exactly how the New Testament frames his faith. Exodus 2:10 says Pharaoh's daughter adopted him as her son. In the ancient Near East, adoption into a royal household was not symbolic. It normally meant full legal and social status, including education and privilege. It says Acts 7:22, as that Moses was educated in all wisdom of the Egyptian and was powerful in speech and action, which strongly implies elite court level training. Okay? So Moses was trained up as an elite, okay, in Egypt. Okay? He wasn't, like you niggas selling out, for the little bag. And no, Moses way up there. Okay? So you niggas talking about missing camp for a job, and you niggas want to be podcast celebrities and all. No. Moses is way up there. Okay? Hebrews 11:24-26, it says, interprets Moses' life explicitly through faith. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, this is Hebrews 11:24. Okay, it says, by faith, when Moses had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, he chose to be mistreated along with the people of the Most High, rather to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. Okay, so Moses stepped away from a lot. Okay, it said the author of Hebrews clearly understands Moses as walking away from immense privilege, not merely a comfortable upbringing. It says immense privilege, man. Okay, and no Israelite on the planet Earth today, Mayweather, Jay-Z, the richest nigga you could think of, okay, had the privilege that Moses had, and Moses walked away from. That's why all you niggas are condemned and sold out, because you sold out for far less. Moses walked away from way more. He walked away from true power, true status. Okay, not just a bunch of FRN notes. Okay, some washed up Eves, and you see some cars in the house. No, he walked away from immense privilege. He rather suffer with his people because, he esteemed, all right, Yahweh Shah to be more valuable than that. Okay, It says, was he technically a prince? It says the Bible never gives Moses the former Egyptian title equivalent to crown prince. However, being the adopted son of Pharaoh's daughter would have placed him within a royal family with access, okay? It says with access to power, wealth, and possibility succession depending on the dynasty. Many scholars describe him as a royal court member or prince-like figure, even if not the direct heir. So while Prince may be a modern shorthand, it's not an exaggeration of his status. Come on, man. And that's why there's no way you can respect a nigga that sell out, man. You know, Daniel stayed faithful. Daniel had more power and authority than any nigga on the planet Earth right now. Than any nigga on the planet Earth right now, man. Daniel had way more status and authority and power, as he was the hand of the king in Babylon and Persia. Okay, but his record is that he stayed faithful to his power, man. All right, he was thrown in the lion den twice, man, by two different empires. Once in the Babylonian Empire, okay, and he was thrown in the lion's den again in the Medo-Persian Empire, man. You know, he stood 10 toes down in two empires, man. Okay, for Yahweh Shah, man. Okay, and all he did was get promoted. You see, okay? So there's no way you can respect a nigga that sell out, man. Okay, for some FRNs, man. Okay? It says the faith implications say yes, Moses walked away from a great deal of wealth and security, power and influence, cultural identity, and Egyptian royalty. And he chose instead solidarity with enslaved Israelites, suffering and uncertainty, obedience to the Most High's calling. Okay? No, man, Moses, hey, there was no light thing. You know, you can read that and kind of skim over what Moses did. No, man, that wasn't light. That was heavy what Moses did, man. Okay? It said the New Testament presents this choice as one of the clearest examples of faith causing someone everything the world values. Okay? You know, when you read these things, and these are faith boosters, man. How easy should it be for us, all right, to walk away from debt? Okay? Because when we walk away from everything in this world, we walking away from debt. Okay? We're gonna be turned into immortal still on niggas, man. You know? You still behind on the Xfinity bill. Change instantly. Bow. You know? Student loan, you know, we're gonna be changed, you know. Okay? You know, that Tahoe, you still got 3 years left on that Tahoe, and then you change on their ass, man. We out of here. Okay? So how easy should it be for us, man? Oh boy. So yeah, let's go back. You know, I just want to get the history, you know, dealing with Moses. You know, so let's go back here to the book of Acts. All right. Acts 7:23. It says, one day when Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his relatives, the people, okay, of Israel. He saw an Egyptian mistreating an Israelite, so Moses came to the man's defense and avenged him, killing the Egyptian. Okay, so Moses, you know, he just had love for his people, even though he was raised up in the house of Pharaoh. Okay, he still had love for his people. Okay, and he called the body. You know, when he put himself out there, he risked everything. Okay, he said Moses assumed his fellow Israelites would realize that the Most High had sent him to rescue them, but they didn't. A goddamn nigga, man. Nigga don't appreciate shit. If there's one thing I ain't learned on the planet Earth, a nigga don't appreciate shit. You know, the nigga and the nigga woman don't appreciate a goddamn thing, man. Okay. And it said Moses assumed his fellow Israelites would realize that the Most High and sent him to rescue them, but they didn't. The next day he visited them again and saw two men of Israel fighting. He tried to be a peacemaker. Men, he said, you are brothers. Why are you fighting each other? But the man, but the man in the wrong pushed Moses aside, who said, you are, who made you ruler and judge over us? He asked, man, a nigga. Okay, it is, you already in captivity, you know. Y'all need to be closer than ever. All right, and Moses tries to play peacemaker, and the nigga said, who made you ruler and judge over us, not knowing that the Most High, okay, was going to establish Moses as ruler? Little did a nigga know, okay? It says, are you going to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday? Yeah, so nigga dry snitching, okay? And like I said, when persecution comes, it's going to be niggas that know that they're Israelites, and just niggas in the world, niggas and Eve in the world is going to be on the front line of persecuting the prophets, man. Okay? They're going to be in the trenches for Esau to persecute the prophets, man. So a nigga, you know, a nigga was loud. You know, a nigga said it loud. You know, are you going to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday? Yeah, so a nigga was going to detail. Yeah, nigga, yeah, man. Goddamn nigga, man. And that's why the Lord, hey, we commanded not to waste no time. All right, with 2/3, man. Let them niggas be. Okay, it said when Moses heard that, he fled the country and lived as a foreigner in the land of Midian. There his two sons were born. 40 years later, in the desert near Mount Sinai, an angel appeared to Moses in the flame of a burning bush. Okay, well, there was Yahweh in that bush, as a representative, okay, of the Most High. Okay, and it says, when Moses saw it, he was amazed at the sight, and he went to take a closer look. It says, and the voice of the Lord called out to him, I am the power of your ancestors, the power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses shook with terror and did not dare to look. Then the Lord said to him, take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their groans and have come down to rescue them. Now go, for I am sending you back to Egypt. So the Most High sent back the same. All right. So the Most High sent back the same man his people had previously rejected when they demanded, who made you a ruler and judge over us? Through the angel, all right, through the angel who appeared to him in the burning bush, Moses, all right, the Most High sent Moses to be their ruler and savior. Okay? And it's similar to Yahweh. Yahweh was rejected, but the Most High made him, all right, the chief, the head. Okay? Jake was rejecting Moses, but the Lord raised or wrote Moses to be a ruler and a savior, man. Okay, it says, and by means of many wonders and miracles, signs, he led them out of Egypt through the Red Sea and through the wilderness for 40 years. Moses himself told the people of Israel, the Most High will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your own people. Moses was with our ancestors, the assembly of the Most High's people in the wilderness, when the angel spake to him at Mount Sinai, and Moses received life-giving words to pass on to us, which is the law. Okay? It said, but our ancestors refused to listen to Moses. They rejected him and wanted to return to Egypt. They told Aaron, make us some gods who can lead us, for we do not know what has become of Moses, who brought us out of Egypt, man. Them complaining that niggas, man. There's a lot of there's a lot of Israelites that ain't ready to leave Egypt. They know that they're Israelites. Okay, when Esau really come down, and Jake gonna be complaining. When Jake started to lose those comforts and convenience of this modern Egypt. Okay, expect Jake to be complaining, man. You know, as if we made the wrong decision, man. Jay gonna be doubtful. Jay gonna be negative. Okay. Well, see, the Lord finna judge these niggas, man. These niggas ain't just gonna, you know, get to be a nuisance. Okay. The Lord finna judge these niggas and get these unfaithful niggas out of here, man. Okay. It says, so they made an idol shaped like a calf, and they sanctified to it and celebrated over this thing, all right, they had made. You know, Jake went right into idolatry, man, showing you that idolatry, the idolatry, okay, is linked to a particular generation, man. You know, they just born to rebel, no matter what miracles are shown, no matter what they see, no matter what they hear, okay, no matter what the Lord does, okay, in their sight, okay, they were just born to rebel, man. There's a generation of wrath, as the Lord says. Then turned away. All right, matter of fact, let's get there real quick to show you, because the Most High, He's gonna mention that generation in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 7. All right, in verse 25, it said, "From the day, Jeremiah 7:25 said, from the day your ancestors left Egypt until now." Okay, linking this current generation Jeremiah was dealing with back to Egypt, showing you that generation was back. You know, because during the time of Jeremiah, that's when Jake completely went to the left and went hard body into idols. Okay, you had Josiah, you know, he was a righteous king. He did a reform, but after Josiah, it went right back, all right, to idols, man, right back to the BS. Okay, showing you that generation of Egypt, okay, them niggas was back during this time. Okay, it said, from the day your ancestors left Egypt until now, I have continued to send my servants the prophets day in and day out. But my people have not listened to me or even tried to hear. They have been stubborn and sinful, even worse than their ancestors. Tell them all this, but do not expect them to listen. Shout out your warnings, but do not expect them to respond. Okay? Knowing them niggas weren't going to listen. All right, the Lord knew that this was that generation that was just born to rebel. Okay, and nothing could be said to these niggas, man. You know, you knew we wasn't getting no response out of these niggas, man. Just like today, that's why we don't marvel, you know, when Jake don't believe. Okay, so say to them, this is a nation whose people will not obey the Lord their power and who refuse to be taught. Okay, thus I said, truth has vanished from among them. It is no longer heard on their lips, man. And you 2/3, all right, they don't have a thought of the Most High. They don't have a thought of the promises. Okay, they don't have a thought of prophecy. Okay, truth has vanished amongst this generation, 2/3, man. Okay, it's all folly, pure folly and degeneracy, man. Okay, and it says, shave your head in mourning and weep alone on the mountains, for the Lord has rejected and forsaken this generation that has provoked his fury, man. Okay, so Moses, he was dealing with a generation, okay, that refused to be obedient. That rebellious generation, man. Okay, and then right behind the seeds of those Israelites, they was obedient. You know, they went into the land under Joshua. You know, so it shows you there's a generation, okay, of obedience, which is the house of David, but then there's a generation of rebellion, okay, and it's the legacy of the 2/3, man. These niggas would always come on the earth and rebel, okay. You read the book of Judges, you know, going into what they call the cycle of sin for Israel. You know, they would do right, you know, and then they would be rebellious, go into captivity, all right, and then they will begin to call on the Lord. He would deliver them. They would do good for a while, all right, and they will go back into captivity because it was that same generation just keep cycling back, man. Okay, being rebellious every time, all right, and then all them niggas are back at once today, man. Okay, no doubt about it. All right, so going back to the book of Acts, chapter 7, and verse, what we was at, in 40, started 41. It says, so they made an idol, all right, shaped like a calf, and they sacrificed to it and celebrated over this thing that they had made. Then the Most High turned away from them and abandoned them to serve, all right, and abandoned them to serve the stars of heaven and their gods. In the book of the prophets, it is written, was it to me you were bringing sacrifices and offering during those 40 years in the wilderness? Okay, Israel. Now you carry your pagan gods, the shrine of Molech, the star of your god Rephan, okay, and the images you made to worship them. So I will send you into exile as far away as Babylon. Okay, so Jake just had this, Jake just loved idolatry, man. Okay. Verse 44 says, our ancestors carried the tabernacle with them through the wilderness. It was constructed according to the plan the Most High had shown to Moses. All right, because Moses, the tabernacle was modeled based off of a vision, okay, that Moses saw in the heavens. The Heavenly Father gave Moses a vision from the heavens to build that tabernacle. Okay, the temple was modeled after their tabernacle, which was a model of what was going on in the heavens. There was even a priesthood in the heavens. You see, it said years later, when Joshua led our ancestors into battle against the nations that the Most High drove out of this land, the tabernacle was taken with them into their new territory, and it stayed there to the time of King David. David found favor with the Most High and asked for the privilege of building a permanent temple for the power of Jacob. But it was Solomon who actually built it. However, the Most High doesn't live in temples made with human hands, as the prophet says. Heaven is my throne and earth is my footstool. Could you build me a temple as good as that? Asked the Lord. Could you build me such a resting place? Didn't my hands both, all right, I said, didn't my hands make both heaven and earth? Okay, so the Most High, is not confined to a temple. Okay, the temple was symbolic, because the temple was always the physical temple, the first and the second temple. Okay, that was a shadow of things to come. Okay, because we will become the temple. All right, and the Lord will dwell in us forever, because the temple represented what? The favor and the presence of Yahweh Hashem Shai. Well, in the kingdom, we're going to be the temple. We're going to be the presence. Okay, we're going to represent the presence and the favor of the Most High on earth. Okay, the sons of God. Okay, we're going to be the tabernacle. You see? Let's let's go here to the book of Revelation. Okay, let's get this in the KJV real quick. This is Revelation 21. In verse 3 it says, and I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of the Most High is with men. Okay, because those first temples, the one built by Solomon, okay, and then the rebuild, during the time of the Medo-Persian Empire, okay, under Zerubbabel, Joshua. Okay, the second temple was both of them were symbolic of us. Okay, beginning with the first fruits being that temple, that permanent dwelling of the Most High. Okay, his presence and favor in the earth amongst his people. It said, behold, the tabernacle of the Most High is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and the Most High himself shall be with them and be their power. Okay, so it was always a shadow of things to come, dealing with the temple. Okay, which I say, we're the temple now. Okay, we're that building. Okay, we're going to represent the Most High's glory, those eternal bodies. Okay, we're going to represent the Most High splendor. okay, in the earth, because that temple was lavish, man. The first temple, it was lavish. It was no building like it, and it was representation of the Lord's splendor in the earth, okay? But when we get those new bodies, that's going to be that new splendor, all right, the representation of the Most High splendor, okay, in the earth, man. His presence and his favor amongst his people, okay? So going back, um, Acts 7 and 51, all right? So now, yeah, he's went through Stephen has went through the history, okay? So now he's going to cuss these niggas out, man, all right? These niggas going to be confounded. You see, Acts 7 and 51, you stubborn people, you are heathen at heart and deaf to the truth. Must you forever resist the Holy Spirit? That's what your ancestors did, and so do you, man. So Stephen, like, look, man, he went through the whole history, he ran it down to these niggas, man. Like, man, y'all stubborn ass niggas, man. Y'all heathens at heart, man. Okay? They spiritually deaf to the truth. You say you resist the Holy Spirit just like them niggas did, man. Okay? It said, name one prophet your ancestors didn't persecute. They even killed the ones who predicted the coming of the righteous one, the Messiah, whom you betrayed and murdered. You deliberately disobeyed the Most High laws, even though you received it from the hands of angels. The Israelite leaders were infuriated by Stephen's accusations, and they shook their fist at him in rage. Man, them niggas were pissed. They were cut. They were hurt. Okay? But Stephen, full of the Holy Spirit, gazed steadily into heaven and saw the glory of the Most High, and he saw Yahweh Shai standing in the place of honor at the Most High's right hand. So the Lord opened him up, to let him give a sneak peek of what was going on in the heavens, man, as he was giving his testimony, man, and Yahweh Shai himself stood up, man, because he was pleased. Okay, and when Stephen seen that, he was ready to go. He didn't care. And the Lord put his extraordinary spirit on him, man. And it says he told them, "Look, I see the heavens open and the Son of Man standing in the place of honor at the Most High's right hand." And them niggas want to study that, man. You know what I'm saying? Niggas do not appreciate the glory of Yahweh Bashem Al Shai, man. That's why niggas just got to go. Okay. And he told them, "Look, I see the heavens open and the Son of Man standing in the place of honor at the Most High's right hand." Okay. But Jay just want that lick back. They ain't care about none of this magnificent glory of the Lord that's happening in real time. Jake just want that lick back, man. All right. A simple, low frequency nigga, man. Okay. So then they put their hands over the ears and began shouting. They rushed at him and dragged him out of the city and began to stone him. His accusers took off their coats and laid them at the feet, all right, of a young man named Saul. All right, so this is when Saul, which will later become Paul, is introduced on the scene. And they stoned him. Stephen prayed, "Lord Yahweh shall receive thy spirit." He fell to his knees, shouting, "Lord, don't charge them with this sin." And with that, he died. Man, that was a hell of a testimony. Stephen is going to be greatly rewarded forever, whoever he is, wherever he is. He's here now, you best believe he's in the camp and he's on fire somewhere. Getting ready to receive that eternal reward, man. And this is part of his legacy forever, man. See, this is, hey, we want to close this thing out with honor, man. Even if it means death. We want to close this thing out with honor. Okay? Because there's nothing for the Lord to raise us up, man. Okay? And we have a legacy of honor, man. It's a lot of niggas that have ruined their legacies, man. Okay? A lot of the Jakes, that took the dishonorable discharge, man. Okay? Based on the cares of this world. Okay? The traps and the snares of this world, man. Okay? But we want to finish out with honor, man, no matter how it be, whether it's through death, whether we're changed, we don't see death, however it might play out, man. we lose everything. Okay, we want to finish out with honor, man. Because Stephen has a good name. Okay, forever. All right, and he's back now. If he's here now on the earth, he's getting ready to close out, man. Okay, and solidify. Okay, his legacy, his righteous legacy, man. Lord will. All right, all you sincere brothers. May the Lord be with us to close out and solidify our legacy forever, man, in righteousness. Okay, so that was the point, Lord will, you brothers. All right, and you sisters edified once again. I'm going to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Kankadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessing salutations. Hopefully, Shalom.